It's also a confirmation of what the church has proclaimed for millennia, that we are not made to be alone, but we are made for covenant.
Sociologist Dr. Brad Wilcox speaking at this year's Issues Etc. Making the Case conference.
So give today's young men and women the truth that they deserve. Pursue marriage, pursue it with intention, and pursue it in your 20s, when the window is widest and the possibilities most open. The road ahead, of course, is not easy, but it leads somewhere worth going, and you, 20-somethings here, were made for this journey.
You can watch and listen to Dr. Brad Wilcox making the case for 20-something marriage from the 2026 Making the Case conference. For a $250 gift by Labor Day, we'll send you a link to video and audio recordings of the entire conference. Learn more at issuesetc.org. Bucking a cultural trend can sometimes be confusing, especially if you're a young person and you've been told your entire life that there's a certain path to success and it's going to include getting everything in your life out of the way and up and running before you do anything like get married or have children. There are some who are saying, no, maybe marriage and children can be a cornerstone, not a capstone to my life. Welcome back to Issues Etc. I'm Todd Wilkin. Joining us to talk about encouraging early marriage and childbearing, Katy Faust, a married mother of 4 children in Seattle, founder and director of the children's rights organization Them Before Us. She's leader of the Greater Than campaign, editor and author of a chapter in the book Pro-Child Politics, and a recent column for The Federalist. If you want to be a grandparent one day, raise your kids, to get married, and want babies ASAP. Katy, welcome back.
Always good to talk to you, Todd.
Before we get into our subject per se, what are your thoughts on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's very public decision to freeze her eggs?
Well, it's very clear, I think, that she's announcing that she's running for president, that this had much more to do with a career move than anything else. She had been dating/engaged to her boyfriend for more than a decade. It sounds like now they have broken up. So if she wanted to have children, she could have worked with her biological clock and had them at any point in the last 10 plus years. But what she's saying is, I am signaling that I'm actually going to postpone childbearing even further, even longer. And the truth is that she is just living out, just demonstrating for us a really popular, dominant narrative that a lot of women are leaning into, which is, I have all the time in the world to have kids. I can wait. I can technologically push pause on my childbearing years if I want, because the really important things might actually need to take precedence over the marriage and children thing.
Tell us about a conversation your daughter and son-in-law had with some of your friends.
Well, I was talking with these friends. Our whole family was together, which was wonderful because my daughter, who's been married for about a year and a half, live on the East Coast. We live on the West Coast. So they were in town, and so were some friends of ours. And these friends commented to me. They said, we were just talking with your daughter and son-in-law, and we asked them how many children they want, and they couldn't agree if they wanted 5 or 6. And we were stunned because they have a lot of friends who have children, and those friends' children are either nowhere near having kids themselves or said they don't want children. Some of them are adults but still living with their parents. And if they were to have children, it's going to be long in the future and maybe 1 or 2, but maybe none. So they really had not encountered any young adult in their life who actually were planning for having a large family and getting ready to do it soon. So they were really surprised. They were impressed, too. It wasn't like they were looking upon them with derision. It was just novel. It was just so outside of the realm of their experience thus far. And that's a sad commentary on the state of our culture, to be honest.
What is the order of operations prescribed for most young Americans today?
Well, I think it's the one that my 2 middle-aged friends who don't have children themselves and who are watching their mostly progressive friends who are raising children live out, which is graduate, get a degree, get another degree, travel the world, discover yourself, become financially independent, buy a home, pay off your loans, date here and there. And then maybe when you've got everything kind of ordered and in its place, maybe then you get married. You put it on top of everything else that you've already done. And then once you're married, wait a little while and maybe have a child or two. So that's sort of the order of business that I think a lot of people have been pitched and now are living and leaning into. I mean, that is the plan that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is following. And it means that her parents are unlikely to have very many grandchildren, maybe none at all. So it's the wrong script. We're handing young people these days the wrong script.
In particular, how has our culture taught girls and women that their fertility is an adversary?
Well, I think that we have messaged that they have all the time in the world to become married and become mothers, when the reality is that is just not true. The window that women have to work with their bodies to conceive and bear children is pretty short, late teens to late 30s. That's really the best window. It's possible to get pregnant when you're 39 or 42 or 46 or maybe 48. It's much, much harder. Anything past the age of 35 is deemed a geriatric pregnancy. Risks for fetal abnormalities and miscarriage increase, and just it's harder to get pregnant to begin with. So unfortunately, we have messaged to these young women that they have all the time in the world when they don't. And we've told them, many of them would say, at some point, I'd like to get married and have children. But we've told them what you need to do is prioritize career and education during your prime childbearing years. The time when it's going to be the easiest for your body to welcome children is the exact time when those girls are getting an undergrad, a graduate degree, maybe a doctorate degree, working hard in the workforce, trying to make partner in the law firm. And all of those years are years they're not going to be able to get back when they do decide to get married and have children. Ultimately, I think that these women have believed a lie that to be truly equal to men, their career path and the timing for children needs to look exactly like men's. And that is a recipe for disaster because women's bodies are not like men's bodies, and their choices need to reflect those differences.
Where, in that scenario prescribed by the culture, where do grandchildren enter the picture?
Well, I know a lot of the people that are in their 60s or 70s or 80s that are hoping, urging, sometimes politely hinting that their 30-something child or maybe their 40-something child should, get married and have a child. Or if they are married, hurry up. Where are the grandbabies? Why can't, you reorder your life and decide that now is the time? But the truth is that a lot of young people have just imbibed this idea that children, it's not really that important. Maybe marriage isn't even that important to me. Maybe just living my best life and traveling the world and making sure I get enough me time, that tends to be what dominates the mindset of a lot of young adults and even people in their 30s and 40s sometimes. Now, unfortunately, for those people who are in their 60s or 70s who still don't have grandkids, whose own children, adult children, did not get the message that you can't just welcome children anytime you want. It actually is going to be incredibly difficult if you want to do that later in life. Some of them will be relegated to the sad fate of having one or two or no grandchildren at all.
How are American parents sadly reinforcing the deferral of both marriage and children?
Well, the Pew Research Center did a study in 2023 where they asked American parents, what you're telling your children matters in life. And overwhelmingly, parents said financial stability. That is the thing that you need to prioritize. And so, of course, that's going to trickle down to the advice that they give their kids as it relates to going to college and what to prioritize and how much emphasis to put on a job and all of that. Only 1 in 5 American parents told their children, even their adult children, that they should prioritize marriage and children. 1 in 5. So why do we expect that our kids are going to get the message that actually dating well, getting married early, and then being prepared to have children sooner rather than later is important if 80% of parents are telling them, no big deal, this isn't something that you're ever going to need, let alone something that you should prioritize sooner? So when we look at the demographic crisis, where we're seeing plummeting fertility rates, where we're looking at those grandparent-aged people who don't have any grandchildren, a lot of the blame actually needs to go on the parents themselves for that.
You say that your children grew up knowing that children aren't an interruption to the good life. They are the good life. What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't think that my husband or I ever sat down and said, listen, this is the path that you need to follow. We want you to think well, love the Lord, graduate from high school, and then really soon after that, we want you to date well and then get married early so you can have a lot of grandkids right away. I don't know if we've ever said that. What we did do is we just delighted in our kids. We didn't have a whole lot of money. We didn't get to do a lot of the things that some of the families in Seattle did. We didn't take our kids to the zoo or to the aquarium. We didn't go on lavish family vacations. If we went away, it was because somebody loaned us their cabin for a week. And so we didn't have a lot of those like money-rich experiences with our kids. All we did is we just had so much fun with them. When my husband had his days off on Friday or Saturday because he was a pastor, we would just wore the Legos out on the kitchen floor and they would stay there all day. I would have to kind of like tiptoe around them as I was making food because it was Lego Fest, and we couldn't go out to restaurants very often, but we would take long walks as a family. And at the end of the walk, the kids could get a cookie or a hot chocolate. And so the kids knew that we just liked being with them, that the best part of our week was when we got to hang out with them and do fun things with them. And so they didn't get the message from us that kids were going to interrupt our best life. They were the best part of our life. And so all throughout their, especially early childhood, they just knew that having kids was fun and awesome, and their parents liked it. So that was the first message that they got about their own futures. Someday I'm going to have kids, and that someday is going to be some of the best parts of my life.
You mentioned dating well. What does that mean?
Well, we've talked with our kids really explicitly from the time that they were early teens, 14, 15, 16, about dating. What is dating for? Dating is actually really important. There was unfortunately a trend about 20, 30 years ago to kiss dating goodbye, as if you can just go from no contact with the opposite sex to suddenly, seriously, and judiciously and discerningly courting and then getting married. Dating is actually really important in terms of having those lower rungs of the ladder of let me ask you out, let me establish, set the parameters for this 60-minute date where we're going to go for coffee and there's going to be no alcohol and it's just a quick get to know you and there's no obligation afterwards, but we're going to practice, having those interactions polite, dignified. He's planning, she's accepting, it is gracious. We talked about building those skills, those social skills with the opposite sex in high school, especially late high school. And then once they went to college, we said, look, this is the prime time where you're going to be with a pool of people who have a like-minded worldview. This is your chance to be serious about prioritizing dating. Now, you do not get to decide whether or not your child meets the person that they should marry in college, but that is their best shot. So don't squander it. Really prepare your child to go to a school where they're going to fall in with like-minded peers and tell them, I want you to be a great student. I want you to look for career opportunities. You can do that. You should do that while you also prioritize dating. Like evaluate the guys or girls in your world that have similar interests, study their character, spend time with them in group settings. But then when you see somebody that's interesting, ask them out or accept their ask if they ask you. This is something that you should actually prioritize when you are young, 19, 20, 21. This is the right time for kids to take dating seriously, not because it's an emotional thrill, not so that they can update their status on Instagram, but because this is when they should start thinking about who am I going to share the rest of my life with.
With about a minute here, talk about marriage as a cornerstone and not a capstone.
Well, this is what the 80% of American parents get wrong. They think their children first need to get degrees, pay off their debt, discover the world, travel, and then maybe when they've done all those other things, they can place marriage on the top like a capstone after they have all the other foundation stones of their life arranged. That's not the right way to think about it. Why? Because if you place marriage as a capstone on your life when you're 34 or 38 or 42, there's not a lot of time for grandkids there. You need to encourage your kids to have a cornerstone understanding of marriage, where they do it first, they build a life together, then they pay off their debt, then you figure out what degrees are next, then you decide what kind of career you're going to pursue. And in the midst of all of that, there's a lot of time for not one or two children, but maybe 5 or 6.
Katy Faust is married and mother of 4 children in Seattle. She's founder and director of the children's rights organization, Them Before Us, leader of the Greater Than campaign, editor and author of a chapter in the book, Pro-Child Politics, and a recent column for The Federalist. If you want to be a grandparent one day, raise your kids to get married, and want babies ASAP. You'll find a link to it and to them before us on the podcast page for this episode at issuesetc.org. Katy, thanks.
Thanks so much, Todd.
Making the case for 20-something marriage was Dr. Brad Wilcox's presentation at the 2026 Issues Etc. Making the Case conference. Dr. Wilcox is a professor of sociology and director of the National Marriage Project at the University of Virginia. For a donation of $250 by Labor Day, you can watch an on-demand video stream and download audio recordings of this year's conference from start to finish. Learn more at issuesetc.org or by giving us a call, 618-223-8385. Tuesday on Issues Etc. we'll conclude our series on family discipleship with Dr. Mark Thompson of Concordia Seminary, and we'll look forward to Sunday morning according to the 3-year lectionary, discussing Peter confessing Jesus as the Christ in Matthew chapter 16. Our guest will be Pastor Peter Bender of the Concordia Catechetical Academy. I'm Todd Wilkin. Thanks for listening.
Listen weekday afternoons to Pastor Todd Wilkin and guests on Issues Etc. Issues Etc. is a listener-supported program. Your financial support is vital for the continuation and expansion of this worldwide outreach. Our mailing address, Issues Etc., P.O. Box 83, Collinsville, Illinois, 62234. Box 83, Collinsville, Illinois, 62234. You can also donate at our website, issuesetc.org. Issues Etc. is a production of LPR, Lutheran Public Radio.